Okay, so this week we are going to do a really fun assignment that I actually do normally in class. It's an abstract assignment. You can use anything that you have in your house. And I know that I normally say don't trace, but this is an opportunity for you to trace. A lot of my students like this assignment because it takes the pressure off of drawing things realistically. So this assignment is modeled after an artist work. His name is Wasily Kandinsky. If you check in our Canvas course, I've posted the Nearpod about Kandinsky and about his work and about where he was born and what he did. So before you start this assignment, I'd love if you'd go take a look, learn a little bit about him. It's not very long. It would take probably 2 or 3 minutes to look at, but this is a really fun, no pressure project, and I figured it was a good one because you can find things in your house to use. I did this project with my stepdaughter last week, and she really enjoyed it. So I will show you how to do it step by step, and then if you have any questions, you can reach out to me on Teams or email me, and I'll be happy to help. Okay, so this is the project that I'm going to teach you guys this week. If you looked at the Nearpod and kind of learned about Kandinsky, I had some examples of his work. Kandinsky was known for these very geometric, abstract pieces of art. Most of his artwork was overlapping with different shapes and different lines and different colors. So I recreated a Kandinsky piece, and I simply use things around my house. So some of the things that I like to use are circle pieces. So this is a top of a mason jar that I like to use. Just any glass that you have so that you could use either the top or the bottom. This is another piece from the mason jar, just from one of my juices. A ruler would be awesome, but if you don't have a ruler, then you can actually use just an edge of a book. I used to do that all the time. I famously would lose all my rulers, so I got really, really good at using books. So if you can find a nice big book to use the edge, or a notebook, that will be just as good as a ruler. You don't have to measure anything, you just need that straight edge. Then I just found some other interesting shapes. I used my Legends of Zelda game case just because I liked the nice rectangular shape. And then finally a really big circle. So this is just a pie pan. Maybe your parents have that, or a larger bowl. Anything really works. Essentially, you're just kind of looking for shapes that are going to work nicely, like the ones that I have here: rectangles, triangles, circles. Even if you find something even more interesting looking that you think will work, you can kind of experiment. If you can't find a shape to trace that you want to do, so for instance, if you can't find a triangle shape, this is when your ruler comes in handy. I simply just made this triangle by tracing straight lines with my ruler. You can make interesting shapes. Really, the sky is the limit with this project, and that's why I like it. You can really kind of take a lot of creative license. I'm going to talk about the color scheme a little bit later on, because there's kind of a few important things with this. I did this with watercolor. You absolutely don't have to do that. You could really just do this with graphite if you didn't have colored pencils either. So you can kind of adjust this depending on what kind of supplies you have. So you can color it with anything that you want. And we'll talk about coloring in a little bit. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, ideally, you would use a blank sheet of paper, a white sheet of paper without any lines. But if you don't have that, you can use notebook paper. Again, we're kind of working with what we have here, so we'll just kind of go with it. So what I like to do is I like to start out with my biggest shape first. So I'm going to use my pie pan, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start layering shapes. Now, the rules for this are as follows. You're going to do 9 shapes. And you're going to do 12 different lines, okay? Now, you want variation in this. You don't want to do all the same circles. So I don't want to take this pie plate and I trace it a bunch of times all over and then call it a day. That's not interesting. That's not really what Kandinsky did. So we kind of want to model what he did and do various different shapes. So 9 different shapes. We're going to just trace around our pie pan. Okay, and then we have our first shape. Okay, and I like to start out with my biggest shape just because I think it's easier to lay out everything that way. And then I'm just gonna start picking things that I want. So let me just take my game case here and I will trace around that. And you can see, like, I decided to take half my glass and do a half circle and then draw a straight line. Again, you can kind of be creative with what kind of shapes you do. So now I'm going to move on to the lines. The lines, I'm sorry, I wrote different. 12 different lines. The lines, you don't have to do straight ones. You can see that in the one that I did here. I did some squiggly lines. Double lines. Again, there are no rules for this. We just want to kind of make it look interesting and different. So I'm going to go ahead and make my lines and see how that comes out. And now we really have a piece that's starting to look like Kandinsky would make. We have various different shapes, we have various different lines, and they're kind of placed in an interesting way. So once you're at this point, you've done 9 shapes and 12 different lines. You're gonna go ahead and either color or you can shade. You're going to apply the same rules that I'm gonna talk about here in a second with either or. So if you shade, you want to do the same thing. It really looks best with color, but again, like I said, I don't want anyone to be left out if you don't have colored pencils or something to color with. If you have markers, watercolor, oil pastel, whatever you have, you can use to create this. So we're gonna go back to my already finished piece. Now you can see that when I went to do this, I actually didn't color each shape a solid color. So the rule here is when a shape intersects with another shape, you want to separate those two by different colors. So instead of coloring this part of the rectangle all magenta, I did part of the circle magenta and then I did this part orange. That gives it a nice separation. That way I can see all my shapes and it also makes it look very interesting visually. Second of all, if you have lines intersecting that make little shapes, so you're gonna see that some of your lines actually make extra shapes, you wanna separate those shapes by color. So you can see this on mine. And I'm gonna take a picture of this and put it on canvas so you can kind of reference it if you want. Please don't copy what I did because you guys are so creative. And again, this is so no pressure as far as being perfect. It's kind of an imperfect type of art. It's up to your interpretation. It's not supposed to look like anything in real life, which is what abstract art is. So that pressure is off you too. Now, I used a really big piece of paper for this. I just happened to have. You do not need to do it on this big of paper. So whatever size paper you have, just do it depending on what you have in your supplies, and then you can pick your shapes accordingly. So if you have a paper that doesn't fit this size of a pan or a bowl, then don't panic. Get something smaller, get a dinner bowl or a salad bowl or something like that that will fit on your paper. Okay guys, well that's the Kandinsky project. It's super fun. A lot of my classes love this in the previous years. Like I said, you can use almost anything in your house to create shapes. If you have any questions about this project or need help or guidance, just reach out to me and I'll be happy to help you. Again, if you don't have the size paper that I used, or you don't have watercolor or colored pencils, don't stress. We can kind of be flexible with what we're using. So just be creative, watch the video, again, if you need to or need any guidance, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what you come up with.